Our great-great-grandmother could keep a family fed, warm, healthy, and housed on the edge of raw wilderness with nothing but her own two hands and knowledge passed down from people who learned it the hard way. Number 7 on this list was used by homesteaders from the Ohio Valley clear to the California foothills to treat infected wounds that today would put you in a hospital. Number 14 was so reliable that the United States Army sat down and studied it during World War II. And number 3 is a food preservation method that kept meat safe and edible for 2 full years. Using nothing you could not build yourself out of rocks and fire. Once you hear what these people actually knew, you are never going to look at your own backyard the same way again. Let us count down. Number 25, reading the land for water. Before drilling rigs and municipal water lines, the first question a homesteader asked when he stepped onto raw land was always the same. Where's the water? Not who do I call? Where is it right now, under my feet? Frontier families answered that question just by looking around. Cottonwood trees in a dry valley meant a water source within 30 feet of the surface. A V-cut in a hillside meant seasonal runoff funneling into one spot. Bright green grass in a field gone brown in August meant a hidden spring just below the topsoil. They watched where deer gathered at first light and where insects swarmed at dusk. A man who read those signs correctly could sink a hand-dug well on the first try, saving weeks of brutal labor. That skill kept entire settlements alive during drought years when every obvious creek bed had gone dry. Today, we call a plumber. Frontier families called it reading the morning. Number 24, smoke curing meat without a smokehouse. A permanent smokehouse required lumber, time, and a homestead you planned on keeping. Families pushing west did not always have any of those things. The trail cure used green hardwood chunks cut fresh so they smoldered instead of burned. Hickory was best. Apple worked beautifully. Pine was never used because the resin ruins the flavor and can make you sick. Wet burlap draped over a simple pole tripod, strips of venison or beef hanging inside, a low smoldering fire below that never climbed past 120 degrees, 8 to 12 hours. That smoke deposited antimicrobial compounds directly into the meat surface while the gentle heat drew moisture out from the inside. Done right, trail-cured meat stayed stable for 3 to 4 weeks at room temperature, long enough to cross the plains. Every family had their own wood blend and timing. Those differences were not personal preference. They were survival secrets passed between families like gold. Number 23, rendering lard and wasting nothing. One hog butchered in November could carry a frontier family all the way to spring, but only if they used every single part. The leaf fat packed around the kidneys went into the rendering pot first because it produced the cleanest lard possible. Pale as cream, almost no flavor, melted slow and strained clear into ceramic crocks and sealed under a layer of salt. Stored in the root cellar, it kept for a full year without refrigeration. That lard went into pie crusts, cornbread, soap bars, and candle molds. It waterproofed boots and conditioned saddle leather. One animal butchered correctly was a hardware store, pharmacy, and a kitchen supply shop arriving at once. Then Crisco showed up in 1911, and Procter & Gamble spent millions convincing American women that hydrogenated cottonseed oil was modern and scientific. 70 years of research later, we found out which one was actually damaging hearts. It was not the Laird. Number 22, building a root cellar with hand tools. The root cellar was the refrigerator, the freezer, and the long-term pantry of the frontier home, built from nothing but a hillside and a few weeks of hard labor. A north-facing slope that stayed in shade year-round, combined with 8 feet of packed earth overhead, kept the interior between 32 and 40 degrees without any machine. Families dug into the hillside with pick and shovel, shored the walls with fieldstone or rough-hewn timber, and laid an earthen roof that insulated the same way a heavy coat does. A ventilation pipe managed humidity so nothing rotted before its time. Done right, potatoes stayed firm through April, apples came out crisp, cured meat held stable. No electricity, no moving parts, no monthly bill. Modern homesteaders spend thousands on climate-controlled storage to do what frontier families accomplished with a shovel and sore shoulders. Number 21, making lye from wood ash. Every frontier fireplace produced two things every morning: heat and raw material for soap. Hardwood ash from oak or hickory was saved in a barrel with a perforated board across the bottom. Rainwater leached through slowly and drained out as lye water, caustic enough to strip grease from cast iron or eat through soft leather if left too long. That lye water went into a pot with rendered fat at a ratio every frontier woman knew, not from a written recipe, but from feel and from watching her mother. Boiled long enough, lye and fat transformed into soap. Soft soap for laundry, hard bars for skin and dishes and floors. They tested lye strength by floating a raw egg in it. If the right amount of shell showed above the surface, the concentration was correct. Every frontier woman knew that egg test before she was old enough to manage the pot alone. Chemistry class taught at the kitchen fire before chemistry class had a name. Number 20, snare setting and small game trapping. A frontier family that ran out of powder and shot did not go hungry. They snared. A simple loop of braided horsehair or twisted wire set along a rabbit trail at precisely the height of the animal's head required no bait, no waiting, no noise. The skill was reading the trail, fresh droppings, compressed grass, the faint depression where a rabbit's foot had hit the same spot 100 mornings running, set the loop 2 finger widths above that depression, and it caught the animal cleanly as it moved through its own path. A skilled snarer could set 20 loops in an afternoon and check them all at first light. Rabbits, squirrels, grouse, and muskrat went straight into the pot. During hard winters when large game went scarce, small game snaring was the difference between eating and not. Boy Scout manuals used to teach this, then they quietly removed it. If you want to hear about more secrets from way back when, hit that subscribe button. Number 19, broadleaf plantain as field medicine. That flat-leaved weed pushing through every crack in every sidewalk in America right now is broadleaf plantain. Frontier families considered it as important as bandages. More important sometimes, because bandages ran out and plantain never did. Crushed and pressed against a bee sting, a splinter, or a festering cut. A plantain poultice drew inflammation out of the tissue within minutes. The active compound aucumin has demonstrated real anti-inflammatory properties in modern laboratory studies. This is not romantic folk superstition. It is observed, repeated, effective medicine that frontier women applied to boils and infected wounds consistently enough that the skill was passed to every child in the household by age 8. The entire emergency pharmacy was growing in the ditch beside every road on the continent. We walk past it every single day. We just forgot what it is. Number 18, drying herbs for winter medicine. The rafters of every serious frontier kitchen were hung thick with bundled herbs from late August through September. This was the medicine cabinet being restocked before the cold came, and the plants went under the ground. Peppermint for stomach trouble, chamomile for fevers in children, echinacea root for respiratory illness, comfrey leaves for bruising and joint pain. Herbs cut just as the flowers opened had peak concentration of the volatile oils that made them useful at all. Hung in small bundles in a dry space with good airflow, they cured in 2 to 3 weeks and held potency for a full year. Every frontier woman kept a handwritten remedy book, herb names, preparation methods, dosages, notes in the margins about what worked better than expected. Those books were passed from mother to daughter with more care than furniture. Most of them are sitting in cardboard boxes in antique stores right now. The writing is still legible. The knowledge is still accurate. Number 17, preserving eggs in water. Glass hens lay heavily through spring and summer. Then fall comes and laying slows to nothing. A frontier family that did not bank those spring eggs was going without eggs from November through March. Water glass solved that completely. Sodium silicate dissolved in water was poured into large stone crocks, and fresh, unwashed eggs were lowered in. The solution sealed every pore in the eggshell against bacteria and air. Eggs stored this way stayed fully edible for 6 to 9 months at room temperature in a cool cellar. 1 jar of sodium silicate cost pennies, and the crocks were reused for decades. The United States Department of Agriculture actually recommended water glassing in their home preservation guides during World War II. After the war, refrigerator companies were advertising heavily, and the government quietly stopped mentioning it. The technique did not stop working. The marketing pressure just changed the conversation. Number 16, reading weather from nature. No weather app, no barometer, no satellite image. Frontier families read tomorrow's weather from the living world around them with a reliability that surprises people raised on phones. Swallows flying low before a storm were chasing insects that descended in falling barometric pressure, a real and observable phenomenon. Cattle lying down in open fields 2 hours before rain were responding to the same pressure change. Rings around the moon measured incoming cloud layers. One ring meant rain within 24 hours. 2 rings meant 48. Woolly bear caterpillars with wide brown bands predicted mild winters, a piece of folk wisdom that a researcher at the American Museum of Natural History investigated and found genuine correlations in. These were not superstitions that survived by luck. They were centuries of careful observation by people whose harvest depended on getting the forecast right. You do not pass down bad information for 5 generations. You pass down what holds up. Number 15, hand digging a well. The Army Corps of Engineers studied hand-dug well techniques during World War II, specifically because military planners needed to understand how frontier communities had achieved consistent access to groundwater across an entire continent without machinery. What they found was systematic skill, not luck. Identify water signs in the surrounding landscape, dig in the pre-dawn hours when the ground is coolest and the labor least punishing, shore the walls with fitted stone rings as you descend to prevent cave-in. A skilled well digger knew by the smell of the soil alone when he was close. Earthworms driven upward by rising moisture below, clay giving way to gravel, the first cold dampness on the wall face that meant the water table was 20 minutes away. Wells dug by men who understood what they were doing lasted generations. Some still flow today on properties untouched for 100 years. The stone casing has not failed. The knowledge that built them is what is gone. Number 14, starting fire in the rain. The bark of birch trees contains betulin, a waxy compound that repels water. Peel the thin outer layer and it lights from a single spark, even when soaking wet. Tinder came from the interior of fallen logs, the one place rain truly cannot reach. The teepee structure frontier families built with initial kindling raised the flame above wet ground so condensation did not kill the fire before it established its own heat. Breathing carefully onto a new coal, not blowing hard, which scattered the ash but slow and low and controlled, was a skill that took practice and became automatic once learned. Frontier families could start a reliable fire in a downpour faster than most people today can find a lighter in their own junk drawer. Not magic, not luck. Knowledge practiced until it lived in the hands and required no conscious thought at all. Number 13, preserving meat in salt on the frontier was simultaneously money, medicine, and survival compressed into a white crystal that families protected as seriously as their seed stock or their rifle. A layer of salt in a wooden barrel, a layer of meat, another layer of salt, repeated until the barrel was full and moved to the root cellar. The salt pulled moisture from the meat through osmosis, dropping water activity to a level where bacterial growth simply could not occur. A properly salt-cured ham lasted 18 months without refrigeration. Pork belly became bacon. Fish from summer rivers was packed in salt crocks and eaten all winter. A skill that took years to develop was the ratio. Too little and the meat spoiled. Too much and it was inedible. Frontier women knew the right amount by feel the way a baker knows flour. That knowledge disappeared from American households in almost exactly 1 generation when the electric refrigerator arrived. Number 12, making tallow candles. Beeswax candles were a luxury. Tallow was not. Every time an animal was butchered, rendered beef fat was available at no cost beyond labor. Melted, clarified, poured into tin molds around twisted cotton wicks, or hand-dipped in the old method, they smoked more than beeswax and carried a faint animal smell. But they worked. They cost nothing beyond the labor, and a skilled frontier woman could produce enough to light the whole house through an entire winter in a single afternoon. Knowing how to render fat cleanly so the candle burned evenly, how to twist a wick tightly enough to draw fuel at the right rate, how to regulate pour temperature so the candle cooled without cracking. None of that came from a book. All of it came from watching someone who already knew it and then doing it yourself until the hands understood what the mind could not quite describe. Number 11, tracking game by sign. A frontier hunter who waited until he could see the animal before acting went home empty most of the time. Compressed grass where a deer had bedded the night before, a hoof print in creek mud and the depth telling you the animal's weight, a sapling with bark rubbed clean by antler velvet removal, telling you the buck would return, fresh scat still dark with moisture telling you the animal had passed within the hour. Experienced hunters knew the gait of a healthy deer versus a wounded one, could tell from overturned leaves which direction an animal had traveled, could read whether it was moving toward water or away. Fathers taught this starting when sons were 5 years old because the learning took a decade. It was considered as fundamental as reading letters. Today, it is essentially gone from practical American memory, except in communities that never stopped using it. Number 10, fermenting vegetables. For winter nutrition, scurvy killed sailors and Arctic explorers. It did not kill frontier families who kept a crock of sauerkraut in the root cellar because fermented cabbage holds enough vitamin C to prevent it through the darkest months of the year. Slice cabbage thin, pack it in a crock with salt, press it until the vegetable's own liquid covered it completely, and wait 2 to 4 weeks while wild lactobacillus bacteria converted the sugars to lactic acid, preserving the cabbage and producing B vitamins in the process. The same technique worked on beets, turnips, carrots, and green beans. A frontier family that put up 20 gallons before the first hard freeze had a nutritional safety net that no amount of smoked or dried food could match. Every grocery store now sells probiotic capsules for $15 a bottle. Frontier families got the same thing free at every meal from October through May. Number 9, the spring house. A small stone structure built directly over a natural spring, low enough that cold water flowed through a channel inside the building at a constant 50 degrees, regardless of the season. Milk crocks, butter molds, and fresh meat sat directly in that channel. The spring maintained its temperature year-round without any energy input whatsoever, more consistently than most modern refrigerators managed with a compressor running constantly. A well-built spring house kept fresh cream from souring for 4 days in July. Without electricity, families who had a reliable spring built the spring house before the barn. They understood which structure mattered more for daily survival. The spring never broke down, never needed a repair call, never failed in a power outage. It kept flowing at 50 degrees the way it had for 1,000 years before anyone put a building over it. Number 8, the bread poultice for infection. Before antibiotics, an infected wound that went untreated became septic. Sepsis meant amputation if you were lucky, and death if you were not. Frontier families managed infection with a bread poultice and managed it well enough that people kept limbs and lives that would otherwise have been lost. Warm, milk-soaked bread applied directly to an abscess or infected cut under a cloth bandage drew the infection outward toward the surface, where it could be drained and cleaned. The warmth increased blood flow to the area, the moisture softened the hardened tissue, and the drawing action of warm, moist poultices is documented in modern wound care literature as a real and repeatable physical process. A family that recognized early signs of infection and acted promptly saved limbs with nothing but bread, warm milk, and a strip of clean cloth. The knowledge required nothing expensive, only understanding how to use what was already in the kitchen. Number 7, banking a fire through the night. A frontier cabin in January with temperatures dropping below zero depended on one thing above all else. The fire could not go out between midnight and 6 in the morning. Banking was the art of keeping a fire alive through the night without anyone waking to feed it. A deep bed of hardwood coals built up over several hours of evening burning was covered with a careful layer of ash from the firebox. That ash insulated the coals while cutting off just enough oxygen that they did not burn through. Too much ash and the fire suffocated. Too little and the coals were gone by midnight and the cabin dropped to dangerous cold before dawn. Done right, those coals glowed alive under their ash blanket for 8 hours and caught fresh wood at the first touch of the bellows without any coaxing. Every frontier child knew how to bank a fire before they lost their baby teeth. It was a life skill in the most literal meaning of that phrase. Number 6, making rope from plant fiber. A frontier family that ran out of rope did not place an order. They made rope from whatever was growing along the creek bank, and what they made was frequently stronger than what they had run out of. Stinging nettle stems dried to remove the sting and split to expose the inner fibers produced cordage of greater tensile strength than cotton rope of equal diameter. Dogbane, milkweed, cattail leaves, and inner bark stripped from basswood trees all yielded usable fibers. The reverse wrap method, 2 groups of fiber rolled against each other in opposite directions so they lock together under tension, predates written history and produces rope that does not unravel under load. A skilled fiber worker could gather material and produce 20 feet of functional cordage in a single afternoon. Available from any hedgerow or riverbank on the continent, free and renewable every time you needed more. Number 5, salting and packing. Butter. Fresh butter in July lasted 3 days before the heat turned it. Salted and packed butter stored in a cool root cellar lasted 6 months. Coming out in December, tasting almost as it had the morning it was churned. Butter was churned from cream and then washed, which most people today have never heard of. Washed repeatedly with cold water until every trace of buttermilk was removed from the fat. Buttermilk left in the butter was the mechanism of spoilage. Remove it completely, and you removed what the bacteria fed on. Salt was then worked through evenly and thoroughly, not shaken over the top, but kneaded in so every part of every pound was equally protected. Packed without air pockets into a glazed ceramic crock, covered, and kept cold. A frontier family that understood this method ate well through winter. Those who got sloppy with the washing learned the hard way that rancid butter on cold cornbread was one of the genuinely memorable miseries of frontier life. Number 4, the pit cook for large game. When a frontier hunter brought down an elk too far from the homestead to transport in summer heat, the problem was immediate. The animal would begin to spoil before it could be moved. A pit roughly 3 feet deep and 4 feet long was lined with field stone and fired hard for 2 to 3 hours until every stone held intense heat. The fire was removed, the stones swept clean, and the dressed meat wrapped in wet burlap was lowered in. More hot stones piled on top. The pit sealed over with packed earth and left alone for 12 to 18 hours. What came out was fully cooked, tender meat that could be transported safely because the cooking process had killed surface bacteria and the long, slow heat had driven out enough moisture to extend stability. The same technique had been used by indigenous peoples across the continent for thousands of years before frontier families adopted it. When a method survives intact across 10,000 years and 2 entirely different cultures, it does not need improvement. It needs remembering. Number 3, navigation by stars and natural signs. A frontier family, disoriented in 50 miles of unbroken wilderness, without a compass needed to get themselves out today, not next week. The North Star sits above true north and does not move. The horns of a crescent moon point southward in the northern hemisphere. Moss grows thickest on the north-facing side of trees where sunlight is weakest. Ant mounds are built on the south side of trees where the ground warms earliest in the morning. Rivers flow downhill, and downhill in settled country almost always meant finding people, as prevailing winds come from the west. So wind at your back meant you were moving east. A person who carried all of those signs together against knowledge of the regional landscape could navigate without instruments across hundreds of miles of unknown country. Frontier people did this regularly and did not consider it remarkable. They considered it the minimum expected of any competent adult in that landscape. Number 2, making apple cider vinegar. From scraps, after peeling and coring apples, the skins and cores went into a large crock with water and a spoonful of sugar, covered with a cloth and left alone. Wild yeast on the apple skins began fermentation within days. Left long enough exposed to air, the alcohol oxidized into acetic acid and became apple cider vinegar in 8 to 12 weeks. That vinegar preserved food, rinsed wounds, cleaned surfaces, fixed fabric dye, and served as a remedy for heartburn and joint stiffness that frontier families swore by, and modern research has partially confirmed. Every step used what had already been paid for, nothing purchased, nothing wasted. A bottle of apple cider vinegar costs $4 at the grocery store today. A frontier family made a full year's supply from the parts of apples they had already eaten. Number 1, knowing your food before it reaches the kitchen. Every other skill on this list supports this one. The deepest, most irreplaceable thing frontier families carried was complete knowledge of the chain between the land under their feet and the food on their table. They knew which plants were edible in every season. They knew where the game trails ran and why deer used one crossing over another. They could read soil health from the color of the earth and the behavior of the earthworms in it. They knew when a root vegetable was ready to harvest and how to preserve it through the coldest months without a cold chain, a supply line, or anyone else's help. This was not expertise. This was the baseline, the floor. The minimum a functional adult was expected to carry as a matter of daily survival. A frontier woman who could not identify 20 edible wild plants in her region, who could not preserve meat or start a fire in rain, was not considered admirable for her other qualities. She was considered dangerously underprepared for the life she was living. Surveys today show fewer than 1 in 10 Americans can name more than 3 edible wild plants in their own region. 3. When those same plants are growing in every yard, every empty lot, and every trail edge in the country right now. We did not get smarter. We got more dependent, and somewhere along the way we convinced ourselves those two things were the same. They are not even close. Here is your challenge. Pick one skill from this list, just one. Go outside and find broadleaf plantain growing in a crack in your sidewalk because it is there right now. It is always there. Crush a leaf and press it against the next bug bite you get and tell me nothing happened. Learn to read the weather signs in your own yard. Render a small batch of lard and use it to make one meal and taste what your great-grandmother already knew. These skills did not stop working. They were not replaced by something better. They were replaced by something more profitable for someone else, and we were told to be grateful for the trade. Your great-great-grandmother did not think she was doing anything remarkable. She was just feeding her family with what she had, keeping them warm with what grew and burned and stacked, keeping them well with what came up out of the ground each spring. That knowledge belongs to all of us. Share which skill you are starting with down in the comments. Because these were not just survival skills, they were a way of understanding the world that took 10,000 years to build. It is not too late to remember it.